Hello, it's Collette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I'm here with this week's energy forecast. It's the same kind of energy, isn't it, as last week? There's been a shift for sure, but there's definitely this transformative wave that is working through all these energy forecasts that I've been doing since I've been doing them. And as I've said and shared many times before, it's all about transformation. It's all trying to really help us transform ourselves individually, come more in alignment, and also the collective energy to make sure that the collective is transforming and changing. And that can only be done if the individual is doing the work. So the new moon that we had in Sagittarius yesterday is a little bit more of a game changer. There's a steadiness to the chaos, if that's possible, but it's true. And I think the biggest thing that's been coming out for me this week to report that will go into the rest of this week is just the need to speak out, the need to speak truth. It's becoming very important that we understand when we are remaining silent, when things are important to us, when we remain silent, when we see, hear, feel injustice, when we silence ourselves because we are scared of being right or wrong, when we silence ourselves because we believe someone has a better opinion than us or is more educated or more powerful. And so this has been very, very deep with my work with women for many years, but particularly now I'm seeing it more so that there's this space that we are silencing ourselves, and especially the sacred woman. I've been doing a lot of posts about like the dangerously awakened woman, and her voice is actually really super important as we move through these times, that she is able to express herself, speak out about what's important, share her opinion, her view, her belief, not particularly being of the egocentric space that she's only right and everyone else is wrong. That's a space to work on for sure, but that's what she believes, that's what she holds, and she speaks it loudly and clearly, and she's open to discuss that with somebody. I think this is particularly important when we're trying to see that truth shifts things. If we are trying to hold back what we need to say, if we are holding back what we really feel and how we really want to react to something, then we're not being a way shower for truth. We're allowing the old, we're allowing what doesn't reside, or resonate with us in our lives. And that's one thing we really need to know as women, is that truth really, really clears the path. So this might be a really big time that we begin to share some truths about how we feel, about whether we agree or we don't disagree, whether we approve of something or don't approve, and really seeing who that clears out of your lives. People who are afraid of truth are also the ones that don't like to speak truth. And it's a big, big warning for me, the silent ones. There is a space that comes from the less than more than in this as well. So, feeling where you're operating, do I not speak because I feel, well, I'm right and they're all just wrong, so there's no point? Or do you just feel that you don't have the power and the voice to speak out at that moment? And often when we do speak truth, it shifts shame. I spoke about shame last week, about being prolific for last week's energy forecast, and it remains in this one. If you are able to speak at some place of truth, then it also brings the shame, the residual shame, the hidden shame, the repressed shame that you have been holding on to. I've really felt it this week in order to, I think I'm a pretty outspoken person, and that I will challenge and confront and share and speak. And actually, what I've noticed is I probably do that the most, but I also still hold back a hell of a lot. And when something doesn't feel right, I might just say, do you know what? Can't keep saying stuff. But you know what? I can. Because I think that the more I do say and keep sharing my truth, how I feel, what's triggering me, it's not about me. But that trigger obviously needs work on in myself. But do I hold back from saying, actually, that really triggers me, or I don't really agree with that? I think we need to do that more. And this energy in the new moon in Sagittarius is really, really trying to help us with that piece. So really think about that. Think about how you are moving through, and are you being truthful? Are you expressing? Are you sharing? Are you constantly invalidating yourself, or do you think you're right all the time? Work on those pieces. You will be helped with it. The other big thing I really want to focus on is this sense of chaos in the collective. As we know, that's what's going on, but how that affects us as humans. And I have been working on this somatically in classes with people, also through sessions and the online courses I run and hold, that there's this collective energy of being in survival mode. We have just come out of one of the biggest, how I all feel about what happened over the last 5 years or so over this horrible pandemic, and how that affected us as humans, the amount of fear in the collective, the controversy, the lying, the indoctrination of fear in people, the whole thing has left us all in kind of this space now where we're shaking it out still. We're still shaking it out. And there are other things that happened in reaction to that within your body. And I actually had dialogue with someone this week who was in complete denial and wishing not to speak about it. This usual pattern of spiritual bypassing. Let's talk about something good. No, let's talk about how that's affecting you and that you still want to bypass something that is affecting you and will affect me. So this survival mode that's in our body, and I'm seeing it because I'm still working somatically, physically with people. I'm still feeling bodies in survival. And I've been really teaching heavily on the vagus nerve and resetting the vagus nerve and just noticing whether your body is in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And if you don't know what they are, you really need to look them up. Our body is usually, can be in really deep relaxation. If you've been to a yoga class or you've done meditation or you've done qigong, you understand that feeling of being connected and moving in the now and being calm, and like you've had a warm blanket put around you and everything's going to be okay. You've been handed a hot cup of cocoa. That's the feeling of the nervous system being relaxed, and it's very unusual that we're in it. I see people come into my classes dysregulated completely in their nervous system, physical body is rigid, tight, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched, headaches, tension in the hips, spasms in the legs, all of these things. And this is the body in survival. And the vagus nerve is very important for releasing out of that. And I shared a practice in my yoga group the other week, which is how to reset the vagus nerve by placing the hands behind the head, axis of the head, interlocking your fingers, your elbows kind of pointing to the sky. And then you take your eyes to 3 o'clock and you hold them there for a few seconds, really, without moving the head. And you will either yawn, burp, swallow, and that's the vagus nerve resetting itself. And this will take you out of the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn impulses of the body, which are completely natural. That they help us survive, but we don't want to be in survival all the time. So it would be a good idea at the moment to just see if you are in survival mode. Are you feeling flighty? Do you feel like you want to fight everyone? Do you want to make cups of teas for everyone and make it all right? Are you freezing in moments? Are you disconnecting, disassociating? These are all signs that your nervous system's dysregulated. And through the, cataclysm that has been our world recently, most of us are in it. And so the first thing I do upon waking is do the reset, as I've shared with you, and I enter into my meditation, and that helps me calm my nervous system, start off my day in a calmer nervous system. Doesn't always last. Life throws things at us. But I notice how quickened my nervous system is at the moment. And this is new for me as being a somatic practitioner for many years. Ways to regulate and, usually in a calmer state, but life's throwing some things at us. And so you might find that your nervous system is out of whack. And I would begin there this week by saying, I deserve to be calmed. I deserve my nervous system to not be in survival mode. I deserve for myself to feel regulated, safe, connected, and at ease. The being in survival mode will bring lots of frustrations. It will bring more chaos into your life. It will bring dysregulation, contradictions, tensions. It's going to bring all that in. So if you're feeling you're in this constant battle at the moment, it may be that the survival mode is also assisting with that. We are fragmenting in our psyches. I really truly see that in my psychic eye, and I see it in my dreams. I see it in the way people are behaving, that we are becoming more fragmented. The traumas, the wounds, our neurology is changing. The neurodiverse way in which our brains have been nurtured because of the way we've had to live and deal with life and all the other suggestions around that all lead us into being in a very, very different space in humanity. And that makes communication with others very difficult. It makes expressing the self difficult. It makes us realize we have to do some inner work. That if life is a pattern of old traumas, wounds, and fragmentations, then where's that going to lead us? It's not going to leave us into, nirvana, is it? Or into the dream life that we wish for. And so this Sagittarius energy is really allowing us to see that there is a really deep chasm fracture between our dreams and reality. And that chasm that's opened up needs to be looked into. What is this tear? What is this that is separating me from my dreams? And I can sit and fantasize about a dream life, but then when I look at the reality of my life, it's a million miles away. And so that chasm is opened, the fracture is there because it's trying to show you you're not going to get to the side of the dreams until you sort this out, until you look at what the cracks are. And then if you look at the cracks, you can begin to get to the other side and start to live in the potential of your dreams. So we're kind of living in a paradox. We've got dreams, but they feel like fantasies. This is a big one for me at the moment. Fantasy and a dream. What's the difference between living the dream life and living a fantasy? Because your dream life asks you to take actions in the now, in the mundane, in the fracture. And a fantasy just lets you escape all of that and lets you just wander off with nothing changing in your life. So that would be the next thing I put towards you, is to think about the paradoxes in your life, the tension between your dream and reality. There is a realness that wants to come in, a real groundedness that wants to come in as we pursue dreams and the future and the new world. And this could be really, really fractured further by false naivety, false optimism, naivety, false highs, spiritual bypassing. That's coming up in this collective energy at the moment because of the tension between dreams and reality. Working with Jungian psychology, there is the big temptation for all of us to step into fantasy, and why fantasy isn't all bad. It is if it's not made real, and it is if it's an escape mechanism for your psyche to split from reality from. So we do that in spiritual bypassing. And again, I've come across it massively this week. Just this false new quantum leaping, jumping into, there's a lot of people doing spiritual practice that lives in fantasy. I'm a queen. I'm this archetype. I'm living as a priestess. And those women go on for, a class, a retreat, and then they come home and the mundane smacks them in the face. It's not matching up. There's the fracture there. What's the fracture there? Where is the fantasy not meeting reality? I think that's been a big part of my work over the years. I've really wanted to highlight this fracture, to heal this fracture that pulls real spirituality, that really moves people, transforms them, and allows them to live in a reality that changes our reality rather than a fantasy that allows them to escape. So we're all prone to this. I love my little, take a guided meditation to Nirvana and pretend you with the fairies and it's not that I don't believe in fairies. It's just that I'm not using it to split from my reality. So be careful of your own ways in which you leave reality. It's okay, isn't it, to watch a movie and enter into that film's fantasy and go, oh, we all go into some of them beautiful children's movies and come out and go, what a beautiful escape from the world for an hour. But we don't live there. And we take the lessons from there. We take the myth. We take the moral. We take the hero's journey from there. But we don't live in the fantasy, or otherwise we'll begin to see that our world collapses more and more. And I see that in the spiritual community. I see that with women that I pick up that have been working in other spiritual groups, that they have been split because they have been living in a fantasy that hasn't married or matched reality. And I say this on the eve this week. I teach again. I start doing the Grail quest for the Druidess for Shift Network, and I set myself a huge challenge in that 12-week course because I'm going on a Grail quest. I'm going on a mythical journey with these women to step into themselves as the vessel, as the Holy Grail, as the heroine's journey. And I really have to make sure that I home in on that beautiful fantasy, the beautiful mythology, the absolute gorgeousness of the mystical Grail quest, while deeply rooting it in reality and transformation, and how that comes around with taking the concepts of what I know through Jungian psychology, depth psychology, psychospirituality, and bringing it into real life, bridging that fracture, bridging that chasm that goes between fantasy and reality. And so super excited to do that and grow myself teaching that to in a larger scale to a lot of women who are thirsty for change in their lives. So as we begin to honor all the things I've talked about, I know there's a lot here, but I like these to be juicy. That's the key to my teaching. I like a whole lot of material to work with. It doesn't mean about beating yourself up about that. We all love to escape. We all disassociate. We all are in our nervous system. There's many things going on for all of us. That there is just so much happening, isn't there? So we do all this work with self-love and self-acceptance. It means that we look at the harder things with more humility and with a deep nurturing for ourselves, saying, oh my gosh, I do that. Oh, I'm like that. Well, I'm going to change that. It's a much kind of way than being persecutory of the self, or being self-flagellating about the whole way that you behave, because we of course all have shadow. We all do. And it's very naive to think that anyone doesn't. It's very naive to think you can bypass that. It's very naive to bypass your own. And I think when we're looking at people, more and more is coming up in the spiritual communities for sure. But does anybody look at their teacher and say, she doesn't have any shadows, or he doesn't have any shadows? I think that would be an assessment of where we're at individually, psychologically. But to understand our own shadow that we do carry dark, as well as light, makes us look at other people and say, well, I know this person has light and dark, and I'm loving the light part, I'm learning from that. But what's the dark part? Do they share that? And that's why I always try to be open in my groups and try to share from a human point of view and when things are bad for me, because I want to share the darker aspects of my life. Because if I didn't, then there would be a big red warning sign. Where's the shadow? Where am I not in light? Where is my life not in light? Because if someone's selling you a one-sided coin, life is amazing, I'm this, I'm that, it's so wonderful, then it's a red flag. And maybe because you haven't addressed that yourself. But it doesn't mean that we demonize. It doesn't mean that we're horrible about that. It just seems that we recognize it in ourselves and others and say, what could I do about that? So it's, bringing all these aspects forward and being kind, nurturing, envisioning your life differently. What does that look like? What would a different look life look like in reality and not in fantasy? So there's a lot to work with there, definitely. So I don't want to bombard you with any more. I wrote this week a specific set of guidelines for women who are dating. This is going to be a little mini podcast this week because I want to talk about this in more detail with the opportunity to get a PDF with essential questions on. So look out for that on my YouTube and in my groups. But please, I ask you all to share, like, subscribe to these podcasts. I know there are many of you watching them. I see them on my social networks being shared and listened to. So really ask your support. I do this in, the goodness of my own heart to help you all ride the waves and to give you the pieces for inner work that will really help with your own transformation. So I'm sending you lots of love for this week as we ride through another challenging week, but one, again, that is there to evolve you into the highest aspect of the self. Bye for now.